My fiancée mocked my dead father during a fight, so I canceled everything and left her begging for a second chance. I'm a 31-year-old guy, and my dad was the person who taught me everything about respect and integrity. He wasn't rich, famous, or loud, but he was the kind of man who earned quiet respect wherever he went. He worked with his hands, always came home tired, and still found time to ask about my day. He used to tell me, "Son, being a man isn't about how strong you are. It's about how you treat people when no one's watching." Those words became the backbone of my life. When he passed away from a heart condition 3 years ago, it felt like someone had stolen the compass that guided me. Even now, I wear his old watch every day. It doesn't tick right anymore, but that faded leather band reminds me to keep moving with purpose. There are days when I catch myself rubbing the glass face, as if I can still feel the warmth of his hand there. My mom says I got his eyes and his temper, but mostly I like to think I inherited his patience, though I didn't know how much that patience would be tested later. When I met Natalie, I was still grieving. She was this bright, confident woman with an easy smile who said all the right things. She listened when I talked about my dad, even laughed at the stories about him teaching me to fix the old Chevy in our driveway. For a while, I believed she understood how important he was to me, how sacred that memory was. But love has a way of blinding you. I saw warmth where there were cracks, compassion where there was only curiosity. I thought she respected the man who made me who I am. But I was wrong. When I first met Natalie, it felt like someone had opened a window in a house that had been locked shut for years. We met through mutual friends at a small dinner party. She was charming, the kind of woman who made everyone laugh without even trying. When she looked at me, I didn't feel like a broken man mourning his father anymore. I felt seen. For months, she became my comfort zone. The late-night calls, the good morning texts, the soft touches when I'd drift off mid-conversation about my dad. She'd listen quietly and say, "He must have been a great man. I can see him in you." And that one sentence used to undo me completely. It's strange how grief makes you cling to anyone who feels safe. Natalie became that safety. She was there during the anniversaries, the birthdays I couldn't celebrate anymore, even the days when I'd just stare at the old watch on my wrist and say nothing. She'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "He'd be proud of you." At the time, I thought those were the most genuine words I'd ever heard. When we moved in together, everything seemed almost too perfect. I'd cook us breakfast while she scrolled through Pinterest wedding boards. She'd tease me about being old-fashioned like my dad, and I'd smile because that's exactly what I wanted to be. I thought she admired it. My sense of duty, my calmness, my desire for a simple, honest life. Looking back now, I realize she wasn't admiring it at all. She was measuring it, testing it, seeing how far she could stretch the man my father raised before he'd finally snap. The first time I noticed something was off. It was small, almost forgettable. We were at brunch with her friends when I mentioned my dad's watch. I was telling a light-hearted story about how he used to make me clean it every Sunday as a lesson in discipline. Natalie rolled her eyes and said, half-jokingly, "God, you and that watch. It's like your emotional support accessory." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, pretending it didn't sting. But that moment lingered. It was the first time she'd turned something sacred into a joke. After that, the tone of our relationship started to shift. The woman who once admired my grounded nature now called me too serious. She complained that I romanticized the past too much, especially whenever I brought up my dad. She'd say things like, "You can't keep living in his shadow, babe. It's weird." I'd brush it off, convincing myself she didn't mean it the way it sounded. But the cracks were forming. Then came the wedding planning. What started as exciting became a battlefield. I wanted something intimate. Family, close friends, maybe a small garden ceremony. She wanted a grand production, with fireworks, champagne towers, and a guest list that looked like a celebrity event. When I hesitated about the cost, she snapped, "Your dad's gone, not your wallet. Stop acting like you need his permission." That night, I sat in the dark living room staring at that old watch, feeling its weight like a reminder, or a warning. Natalie came out later, kissed my cheek, and said, "Don't overthink, baby. You know I love you." I nodded, but a part of me didn't believe her anymore. Something in her tone had changed. Something in me had too. It happened on a Friday night after another exhausting week of wedding planning. I'd just gotten home from work, loosened my tie, and was hoping for a quiet dinner. But Natalie was pacing the kitchen, wineglass in hand, her phone open to yet another expensive vendor. "We need to book the fireworks by tomorrow," she said sharply. I told her I didn't think we could afford it, that maybe we should focus on the ceremony, not the spectacle. That's when she slammed her glass down on the counter and said, "God, you're impossible. Your dad raised you to be so cheap." The words hit me like a slap. I stared at her, trying to process what she'd just said. "What did you just say?" I asked quietly. She rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, don't start with that my father's legacy crap again. It's like he's still controlling you from the grave." Her voice dripped with sarcasm, and something inside me snapped. "Don't talk about him like that," I warned. But she kept going, her tone growing sharper, crueler. "You act like he was some kind of saint, but maybe he's the reason you're so uptight. He probably babied you into thinking you're perfect." My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. The air felt heavy, like the whole room had turned against me. I wanted to yell, to leave, to do something. But all I could do was stare at her and wonder how the woman I loved could twist something so sacred into poison. She took another sip of wine, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "Maybe it's time you stop worshiping your dead dad and start acting like a man." That was the moment everything changed. For a few seconds, I couldn't even speak. Her words echoed in my head, louder than the ticking of my father's old watch. "Stop worshiping your dead dad." It didn't feel real. My chest tightened, and I felt this wave of disbelief turn into something raw and trembling. I tried to stay calm. That's what Dad would have done. But my voice cracked when I said, "You don't get to talk about him like that, Natalie." She smirked, her tone venomous. "Oh, please. You act like the man was a saint. He's been gone for years, and you still hide behind his ghost every time you don't get your way." I could barely recognize her. The woman who once held me when I cried was now mocking the very pain she used to soothe. "Do you even hear yourself?" I asked, my voice breaking. "You think respect for my father is a weakness?" Natalie crossed her arms. "No," she said coldly, "I think it's pathetic. Maybe if your dad hadn't coddled you so much, you'd actually know how to handle a real argument." Something inside me broke right then. The grief I'd buried came crashing back. The nights I'd cried alone, the mornings I'd stared at that watch, whispering, "I hope I'm making you proud. Dad!" I could feel tears burning my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of her. I turned away, my hands shaking. "Natalie," I said quietly, "you don't deserve to say his name." She laughed. Laughed. That sound was worse than the words. Cold, sharp, almost triumphant. Without another word, I grabbed my jacket, walked out the door, and slammed it behind me. The night air hit my face like a slap, but at least it was honest. That was the first time I realized love could sound like mockery. I didn't sleep that night. I drove aimlessly for hours, the city lights blurring through the windshield while my father's watch glimmered under the dashboard glow. Every time I thought I'd processed her words, another wave of anger and grief hit harder. How could someone who'd seen me mourn, who'd heard me talk about my dad's final moments, weaponize that pain like it was nothing? I ended up crashing at my best friend Marcus's place. He didn't ask many questions. He just handed me a beer and said, "You look like you've been hit by a train." I told him everything. The fight, the words, the laugh. His jaw tightened. "Man, that's not just a fight. That's cruelty." Hearing it from him made it real. He told me not to go back, but I wasn't sure. My mind kept flipping between disbelief and denial. Natalie had been my peace, my safe place. How could she turn into someone I barely recognized? The next morning, my phone was flooded with messages from her. Dozens of missed calls, texts, voicemails. At first, they were angry. "You're being dramatic." Then apologetic. "I didn't mean it like that." Then desperate. "Please come home. I love you." I was drunk and said stupid things. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But every time I replayed her voice in my head, that cruel, mocking tone, my stomach twisted. My dad always said, A man's true test isn't in how he reacts to love, but how he responds to disrespect. That line haunted me as I stared at my phone, her name flashing again and again. I didn't answer. I just sat there listening to the silence between the rings, wondering if this was the sound of something ending for good. 2 days later, she showed up at Marcus's apartment. I heard her voice before I saw her, shaky, tear-streaked, and desperate. "Please, just let me talk to him," she begged at the door. Marcus looked at me, silently asking if I wanted to deal with this. I nodded, more out of exhaustion than forgiveness. When I stepped into the hallway, she froze. Her mascara was smudged, her hair messy. But her eyes, they weren't remorseful. They were defensive. She started crying immediately. "I didn't mean any of it," she said between sobs. "I was drunk, I was angry, and you always make everything about him." Her words twisted the air. I blinked. "What?" She stepped closer, her tone shifting from pleading to bitter. "You put your dad on a pedestal, okay? It's like you're still competing for his approval, even though he's gone. You don't let anyone in because you're too busy trying to be the perfect son." Her voice cracked, but not from guilt, from frustration. I realized she wasn't apologizing. She was justifying. She wasn't sorry she said it. She was sorry she'd lost control. I swallowed hard. "You think loving my father makes me broken?" "No," she snapped. "I think it makes you obsessed. You treat every argument like a moral test. Like you're some kind of saint because he raised you right. Maybe I'm tired of being compared to a dead man." The hallway fell silent. My pulse pounded in my ears. That was the moment it clicked. She didn't hate what I did. She hated who I was. I stared at her for a long time before finally saying, "Then maybe you should find someone who isn't haunted by decency." Her tears stopped instantly. I turned, walked back inside, and locked the door behind me. I thought I'd reached my breaking point after that confrontation, but I hadn't. The real blow came 2 nights later. I'd decided to go back to our apartment, not to reconcile, but to grab a few things and clear my head in my own space. The place was dark when I walked in, still smelling faintly of her perfume. I moved quietly, avoiding the pictures on the wall, the fake smiles that now felt like strangers staring at me. Her laptop was open on the kitchen counter. I don't even know what made me look. Instinct, maybe. When I touched the trackpad, the screen woke up, and a group chat was open. My name was everywhere. I froze. It was her and a few of her bridesmaids, laughing. One message said, "He's still crying about his dead dad. I swear he's like a walking Hallmark movie." Another had a picture of my father's watch, the one I'd left on the counter once, captioned, "His little emotional crutch." I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. I wanted to scream, to throw the laptop, to break everything in that room, but I didn't. I just stood there, gripping the counter until my knuckles went white. That laughter, those words, they stripped something out of me I didn't know could die. Respect. When I finally moved, I packed my clothes, my documents, and that watch. I left the rest behind. Every memory, every piece of furniture, every trace of what I thought was love. As I closed the door for the last time, the apartment felt like a tomb. Outside, the night was cold, silent. I looked at the watch and whispered, "You were right, Dad. A man's worth isn't measured by how much he loves, but what he refuses to tolerate." And right then, I knew I was done. The next morning, I woke up in a cheap motel room with my suitcase on the floor and my father's watch beside me on the nightstand. I stared at the ceiling, numb, replaying everything, her words, the group chat, the laughter. Part of me still couldn't believe it. This was the woman I'd planned to marry, the one I thought would carry my father's values forward with me. Instead, she'd turned his memory into a punchline. By noon, she called again. 15 missed calls before I finally answered. Her voice was shaky, rehearsed. "I know you saw the messages," she said quietly. "They were just jokes." I was venting. "Please, don't do this." "Don't do what?" I asked, my voice low. "React like a human being who just found out his fiancée mocked his dead father with her friends." She went silent for a second, then snapped. "You're being dramatic. Everyone vents about their partners. It's not that deep. That was it. The last thread snapped. I told her I'd come by one final time to talk in person. When I arrived, she looked fragile, hair undone, eyes swollen, trying to play the victim. I sat down, calm and quiet. I wanted to see if there's anything left worth saving, I said. And now I know there isn't. Her face hardened. You're really going to throw everything away? The wedding, the house, us. I stood up and slipped off the engagement ring, placing it gently on the table between us. No, Natalie, I said. You threw it away the moment you disrespected the man who made me who I am. She started crying, pleading, but I couldn't hear her anymore. I walked out without looking back. When the door clicked shut behind me, it didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like freedom. The days that followed were eerily quiet. Too quiet. I stayed at Marcus's place again, sleeping on his couch, ignoring the constant buzz of my phone. Every morning there were new messages, longer than the last. At first, Natalie begged. Please, we can fix this, she wrote. I'll go to therapy. I'll apologize to your mom. I'll do anything. Then came the guilt trips. You're really going to humiliate me like this? Everyone will know you dumped me over a fight. And then, as if things weren't twisted enough, her family got involved. Her mother called, lecturing me about forgiveness and how, no, relationship survives without mistakes. Her sister messaged, me saying Natalie was a wreck and that I was being cold-hearted. The same people who had never once asked how I was doing were suddenly experts in my emotions. At first, I almost gave in. There's a strange pull when someone you loved falls apart in front of you, even if they're the one who broke you. But then I reread those group chat messages. I heard her laughter again, that sharp, mocking sound that cut through everything I thought we were. That was all the reminder I needed. Marcus caught me staring at my phone one night and said, You know what she's afraid of? Silence. She wants a reaction. Don't give it to her. He was right. So I didn't. I blocked her number, deleted her photos, and refused to explain myself to anyone. The invitations were already out, the deposits already paid. But I didn't care. The wedding wasn't canceled out of anger. It was canceled out of principle. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be who someone else wanted me to be. I was just trying to be the man my father raised. Silence became my weapon, and my peace. I didn't post anything, didn't text anyone, didn't explain myself. While Natalie's family scrambled to do damage control, I just disappeared. Friends who had once seen us as the perfect couple started asking questions. I kept my answers short. It didn't work out. That was it. No details, no drama. Just calm indifference. But then something unexpected happened. One of her bridesmaids, the same one who had laughed in that group chat, reached out to me. She apologized. Apparently, Natalie had been spinning the story, telling people I couldn't handle conflict and that I ran away over a minor argument. The bridesmaid couldn't stomach it anymore and told the truth. She even showed me the follow-up text Natalie sent after I left. Messages mocking me for being too sensitive and claiming she'd dodged a bullet. That's when I realized I didn't need to expose her. She was exposing herself. People started putting the pieces together. The sympathy she'd expected started turning into quiet judgment. Mutual friends stopped responding to her posts. A few even reached out to tell me, "You did the right thing, man." Meanwhile, I focused on getting my life back. I refunded every vendor I could, sold the engagement ring, and used the money to pay off my dad's old truck, the one he left me. I started going on long drives again. Just me, the open road, and his watch ticking faintly against my wrist. One night, I posted a simple message on social media. Some lessons don't come from pain. They come from remembering who raised you. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. Within hours it spread, quietly, powerfully, and everyone knew exactly what it meant. It's been 6 months since I walked away, and I can finally say I'm at peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from forgetting, but the kind that grows after you stop justifying the pain someone caused you. I moved into a small apartment near the edge of town. It's quiet, with a view of the old highway where my dad used to take me for late-night drives when I couldn't sleep. I still keep his watch on the nightstand. It doesn't tick anymore, but somehow I swear I can still feel it pulse when I hold it. Natalie reached out one last time a few weeks ago. She sent a long email. Paragraphs of apologies, self-reflection, and claims that she didn't realize how deep my grief ran. She said she'd lost everything. The wedding, her friends, her self-respect, and that she just wanted closure. I read every word, then closed the message without replying. Sometimes silence says more than anger ever could. These days, I've been seeing my mom more, fixing up Dad's old truck, and even volunteering at the community garage where he used to teach me about engines and patience. There's something therapeutic about oil-stained hands and the hum of a rebuilt motor. One evening, I drove out to his grave with that same old watch on my wrist. I stood there, wind brushing through the grass, and whispered, "You were right, Dad. Respect isn't something you give once. It's something you protect every day." For the first time in a long while, I felt him with me, not as a memory but as a presence. I walked away lighter that day, not because I'd finally moved on from Natalie, but because I'd moved closer to the man my father raised me to be. And I know, wherever he is, he's proud.